Hello, welcome to AMA LTL. This is Maria Suleiman. We are going to be starting in exactly 4 minutes. Just wanted to do a quick tech check. Please type yes in the questions box if you can hear me and you can see my screen. Yes, okay, I'm getting responses now. All right, awesome. If you're just joining us, welcome to AMA's LTL. My name is Maria Suleiman. We're going to be starting shortly. All right. All right, awesome. You can hear me. Thank you, Tracy. Good afternoon. Anise, thank you for responding. We have folks trooping in right now. So yes, we're getting up there. We have a lot of people who registered for this webinar today. So I am looking forward to having fantastic dialogue and conversation. Just really quickly, you are muted when you get on. If you want to ask a question, you have to unmute yourself so that I can, so that you can speak to the group. But just be mindful of that because I pause in between to give opportunity for questions. So just be mindful of that, that you would have to unmute yourself to ask a question. Again, welcome. Maria Suleiman here with AMA Consulting. Welcome to our lunchtime learning series. And today we're going to be discussing leading in an organization. And we will be starting in 2 minutes. All right, awesome. It's 12 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to AMA's LTL. My name is Maria Suleiman. If this is your first time joining us on the webinar, welcome. We are so glad that you are here. I am a leadership development instructor, facilitator, and an executive coach. I work with primarily federal emerging leaders and business leaders to help them unleash the already existing greatness. I had my bio up here for a few minutes before we started. I'm not going to read through my bio, but um, at the end of the webinar, I'll post a link to our website so you can get more information about me. I am the managing director of AMA Consulting. We offer professional services to federal agencies in 3 areas: organizational development, business program support, and IT support. Uh, and part of that organizational development support is that we do a ton of trainings. We do leadership development training programs, we do soft skills trainings, we do technical trainings, and we do coaching for federal agencies. So this webinar series came as a result of our work with doing extensive coaching for both civilian and DoD federal personnel, and we found out that the folks were needing like avenues for continual learning and bite-sized learning. And so we started this webinar series 2 years ago to just offer perspectives on a variety of topics that have to do with leadership, personal development, business development, um, for our audience. So today we're going to be discussing leading in an organization. If you've been joining our webinar series, we've been talking about leadership of the last, I would say, about 2 months. We did a webinar presentation called Leading Yourself, where we talked about personal leadership. Then we went into leading people, where we talked about building your influence and having that relationship management skill to be able to lead people. And then we talked about magnificent leadership. What does it mean to be a magnificent leader? And the traits, different leadership traits. Now we're going to leading an organization. So I wanted to start with this description of what organizational excellence is, because we hear this term now. It's like the new buzzword in organizations, and a lot of agencies are using it. And I just wanted to break that down a little bit. What is organizational excellence? Because if you are a leader and you're looking to lead a system, you're looking to lead an organization, whether you're leading an office, you're leading a division, or you're leading a branch, or you're leading a, a part of an agency or a sub part of an agency that has several systems under it, it's important for you to be aware and really be in tune with what organizational excellence is. So it's defined as the ongoing efforts to establish an internal framework of standards and procedures intended to engage and motivate employees to deliver products and services that fulfill customer requirements within business expectations. It is achieved by an organization of consistent superior performance, for example, outputs that exceed meeting objectives, needs, or expectations. So this is, I got this from the American Society for Quality. We do quite a lot when it comes to helping agencies develop quality management systems, or doing business process reengineering, Lean Six Sigma type work. And I thought it was important to start today's webinar with this, because if you're leading in an organization, your leadership skills or your competencies has to encompass a broad understanding of what organizational excellence is. And because that's exactly what you should be trying to accomplish within your organization. And I just wanted to start today because that's important to have that framework in mind, that when you are leading an organization, you really have to have the competencies to be able to establish internal framework of standard and processes. That has to do a lot with systems thinking. So developing systems, developing processes, developing frameworks, not doing things ad hoc, not doing things, not where your team, everybody has a different understanding of how the work is done, and there's no framework, there's no standard, there are no processes or no systems in place. And those systems are intended to engage and motivate your employees. So when you're leading an organization, obviously you need to engage and motivate your employees to be able to deliver a superior performance consistently over time. That is where you really get to with organizational excellence. So within the federal government, when I think about agencies that are really very forward, like GSA, you see that, and then some other agencies like within HHS, FDA, they actually have within their, within different organizational offices, they have new branches that they call organizational excellence branch. And that's all they do. That's all they do is that branch helps to develop frameworks, develop standards, develop processes, and really push the organization towards excellence. So this is a new phenomenon, but I just thought we would start with this today because it's important if you're going to be leading in an organization that you understand that this is the goal. This is what you should be driving towards. This is what you should be looking at. The webinars are only half an hour long, so I try to cover as much material as I can, but I also like them to be interactive. So if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and I can and unmute yourself so that I can have you chime in to the conversation, or you feel free to share your comments in the questions box, that because that way I can read them out, and this can be interactive and you can share your thoughts. So what are the competencies that you need to have in order for you to be able to lead an organization? So we know that OPM has ECQ, which is Executive Core qualifications for different levels of leadership, right? And those OPM ECQs, yes, they're a foundation, but I encourage you, if you really want to be an exceptional, magnificent leader, don't just, you may have gone through leadership training in your organization that have been tailored specifically to the OPM ECQs. There are other things that you need to be aware of, and you need to build in terms of your competencies. So here are the things that I've seen, and I talked a little bit about my background, but I've been working with federal leaders for 18 years, from emerging leaders to senior SESs. And the things that I've seen that have differentiated successful leaders, magnificent leaders, from leaders who are not able to really achieve excellence in your organizations, whose organizations score very low on the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, whose organizations are in constant chaos, is these competencies right here. So systems thinking, I talked about that. That systems thinking is actually a competency. You don't hear a lot of agencies or a lot of organizations talk about that as a competency. They talk about systems thinking as something that is done out there. So it's like, oh, systems thinking is something out there. It's maybe a process or something that the organization should do, but it's actually a competency that as a leader you should have if you're going to lead a large system or a large organization. I'm not going to define all of these competencies and go into depth because, like I said, we only have 30 minutes. I've picked out two of them that we're going to discuss in a little bit of detail, so I'm just going to touch on them a little bit. So what is systems thinking? It's really the ability to figure out how to motivate your employees to create frameworks, systems of how you do your work, and not just create it, but also continuously improve on those systems and those frameworks. Okay, so as a leader, that is a competency that you need to have and you need to build. Okay, so that systems thinking is very important because it really distinguishes organizations that run well, like with like a fine oiled machine, versus organizations that are ad hoc and are reactive and are shoot from the hip and have lack a sense of direction. Because with that, productivity can lack, and then you can't achieve what we started with, which is organizational excellence. Change management, that is also a competency. I liken change management to mental agility. As a leader that is leading an organization, you need to have this competency because we are living in a changing world. Things are constantly changing. And so you have to have a growth mindset or that mental agility, because then when you have it and you foster that throughout your organization, you champion that change throughout your organization, then you will be able to be innovative, you'll be able to grow, you'll be able to continuously improve, and you'll be able to achieve that organizational excellence because you will be delivering superior performance consistently. Change management is one of the competencies that we are going to go into a little bit more depth about, because I think that it is one of the most significant competencies and things that you need to have as a leader in an organization. The second one is the third competency, strategic communication, is really having that concept of the role that communication plays in getting your employees motivated, in being able to push out programs, push out new initiatives, in being able to address problems, manage conflict. So that strategic communication is a big piece. Change management is on here twice, so that's an error. Political savvy. What does political savvy mean? It really means understanding your organization, understanding the chains of command, knowing the powerhouses. What do I mean by powerhouses? Powerhouses are the areas where within an organization where power resides. And sometimes the powerhouses are not necessarily with the people who hold the highest office. Powerhouses are with the people who are have the highest possibility of making change or of leading influence or making things happen. Okay, so that political savvy is very, very important. It's an important competency to have. And enterprising acumen, what does enterprising mean? So this enterprising acumen is the ability to be able to create something from nothing. That's what enterprising acumen means. It's the ability to be able to have the foresight, the tenacity to grow something from the scratch, to build something that did not exist before. This is another trait, not trait, excuse me. This is another competency that is very important to have when you're, especially when you're leading an organization, especially if you're an organization that was newly created, an organization that was created as part of initiative to champion a specific cause. So, for example, we work with an organization that was newly created uh, to tackle a special initiative for HBCUs, and that organization was essentially a startup. So one of the key things that we worked with the leader of that organization was their enterprising acumen, because there was no blueprint for him to follow. There was nothing that was in place prior to that organization being there, because remember, the organization was formed to champion a cause for HBCUs, and so that enterprising acumen became really important in terms of, okay, what is the vision of the organization? We are going to be creating something from scratch. What do the programs look like? Who are we trying to serve? What are the outcomes? What is the team going to look like? What public-private partnerships do we need to put in place? All of those things, yes, there were resources that he could pull, but all of those things were being created. So that enterprising acumen was a competency that we work with to help him develop that through coaching. Strategic hiring. This is another thing that you need to have as a leader of an organization. This is so huge because the work that's going to be done in your organization is going to be done through people. So really having this skill of building this competency within your organization to strategically hire the right and best fit people for the organization. Sometimes that can be challenging because depending on your organization, the hiring piece may have other factors that you don't necessarily 100% hold control over. But it is an important competency for you to have, because that strategic hiring is going to make the difference between you having a high performing team that you can engage, that you can motivate to push out superior performance over time or not. People development. This is also a competency. It is the ability of a leader to have a vested interest in the development of the people that they lead. So I know that people say, yeah, we support you getting training and we support you doing this for their people, but it's more than just supporting people to get training. It's actually having a vested interest in the development of their people. Sometimes the development may not come through training. It may be through mentorship. It may be through giving them opportunities to detail so that they can have that cross-functional learning. So it's really more than just training. I just want to say that about people development. The next one is performance and quality management. This is also a competency that is key to having organizational excellence. If there's no focus on performance and quality, and it's just business as usual, as long as there's no fires, we're fine. But you're not really seeking for organizational excellence if there's no focus on performance and quality. And then the last competency that we think is important for a leader in terms of leading an organization is culture. It's alignment of the culture that you want to portray as a leader. I always say that in organizations, the organizational culture is set or exists, whether it is created intentionally or unintentionally. So the culture is a set of norms that have come to be acceptable by a member of a group. So it's either you create those set of norms, or you're intentional about what the set of norms are by laying down the foundation as a leader and actually showing those set of norms in your behavior and how you make decisions and how you do things, or paying a deaf ear to a set of norms that start to take root and then the culture exists. So the big thing I'll say about culture is whether you intentionally create the culture or not, your organizational culture is going to come to be just by the set of norms that everyone sees that is acceptable. within the organization. So I shared that. Let me pause in here and just look in here and see if we have any questions. Any questions? I do want to hear from somebody in the group today. So please raise your hand if any of what I'm saying resonates with you. If there's anything that you want to chime in with the competencies, what do you think so far from what we've discussed, what the most important competency is, or the competency that resonates with you the most? Let me put it that way, not the most important, because they're all important. But which competency resonates with you the most? I want to hear. Yes, so I got somebody posted in the questions the people development. Yes, people development. That is a big one because it has like a real-time effect. It has a real-time effect on your organization's performance, because when people don't feel like you're invested, don't feel like you care about them and you're invested in their growth and development, that directly affects engagement, and that can go in have a direct impact on your ability to achieve organizational excellence. Thank you so much, Gary. All right. Any more thoughts? And let me look just really quickly. Any hands raised? Anybody wants to chime in? Somebody else wants to ask a question? I want to get some comments. All right, I don't have any more comments, so I'm going to move on here. So I did say that I was going to touch on 2 specific competencies into a little bit more detail. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is political savvy. Now, the reason that I picked this one is because throughout this webinar series that we've been having, I've talked a lot about leading yourself and leading people. And I feel like some of the other competencies that has to do with leading in an organization are somewhat related to that. I really haven't touched on political savvy. And so I wanted to go into detail about this. So I would say political savvy, as I described it, is really understanding your organization, understanding the key players, the lines of authorities, understanding your decision makers, key decision makers, managing up. You hear that term a lot of times, managing up, knowing how to move your agenda through an organization. And if you are the highest leader, and so, for example, if you don't have any boss or you don't have anyone over you, political savvy may involve then understanding the key players in your team, okay, and understanding how things work. So the first thing I want to say about political savvy is that in order for you to be politically savvy, you have to have impulse control. So when I coach leaders and I talk about impulse control, this is a function of your prefrontal cortex in your brain. And this is a big deal because I tell leaders a lot of times it's not what you do as a leader that makes you great. Sometimes it's what you don't do that makes you great. And where I've seen a lot of leaders run into issues, big issues, and end up on Capitol Hill having to do a hearing or land in the Washington Post, is a lack of impulse control. It's a lack of coming into an organization and not really taking the time to step back, to study, to observe, to watch, and not jump right in and start rolling out initiatives and doing things without really being measured. I think that's the word, is being measured. This is a big thing because a lot of times leaders have blind spots. They don't realize how things work. You see this a lot when you have a political appointee and there's clash between how they think things should work, or people move and come from to government from the private sector and they don't understand how things work in the government, and they lack that impulse control and start to make decisions and take actions randomly that then turn around and make things worse. Okay, so what impulse control will help you do is to pause and observe and watch, see how things flow. Like I said, see where the powerhouses are, understand the organization, understand the impact that the organization has on the public, or who are your real customers, who are you serving, what is the public service motivation that's attached to that work. So that impulse control, having the ability to be measured, will really save you from a lot of catastrophe and will help you really develop. So can you go over change management? So Linda says, can you go over change management a little bit more? Absolutely, Linda, I will. So change management was the other one that I chose. So once we finish with political savvy, then I'll go into change management. All right. So then the other piece of political savvy that you should be mindful of as a leader is identifying and maintaining key relationships. Relationships are critical. You need to have relationships for so many reasons when you work in an organization, because you're going to have to rely on those relationships to get resources. You're going to have to rely on those relationships to find answers that you don't have. And then sometimes you're going to have to, frankly, you're going to have to rely on those relationships sometimes when you're in trouble, when things go wrong. It's the relationships that you've built that will come to your aid. So have the ability to have that relationship management skill is very important. And it really contributes to you having political savvy. The next point is interpersonal influence. So when we talked about leading people, we talked about how leadership is getting people to do stuff using influence, not using control. There's a distinction between that. That interpersonal influence also has to do with political savvy, because when you're getting into the right places, you're attending the right meetings, you're connected to the right people, you need to build that interpersonal influence. Say, for example, at a meeting with maybe other leaders who are senior to you, to be able to put your message and your agenda across. Okay. Social astuteness, this is basically social skills. And sometimes our personalities are different. I just wanted to point that out when we talk about social astuteness. This may be related to your personality. So introverted versus extroverted. Whether you are more of a perceiving person more so than a judging person, all of that has to do with your personality. But regardless of whatever your personality is, you can build on your social astuteness. Social astuteness just means the ability to be able to connect, the ability to do people want to even be around you. That has to do with political savvy, because and I hear people say all the time, I don't want to play those office games, I just don't want to be part of the game. Well, I say the game is going on whether you're part of it or not. So you need to learn how to play the game and play it the right way, play it with ethics, not play it in a manipulative way, but you have to be part of the group. That social astuteness is critical to that. Authenticity is being yourself, not trying to be like someone else, or not having split multiple personalities. That's manipulation. That's not political savvy. I talked about mental agility. The last point on political savvy, I would say, which is very critical, domain knowledge of the organization. In order for you to really be able to have political savvy, you need to know what your organization really does. You need to know what each branch does. You need to know what each division does. You need to understand what the key and this information is out there for you to seek. Even if you don't have the relationship with the people who lead those different divisions, but I'm sure they have a strategic document or something that you can get access to through your intranet. So that domain knowledge, it really helps build your confidence, and it also helps you with the social and the influence piece and the relationship piece, because being in the know will help you increase that. Does anybody have any questions about political savvy before we move into change management? Any questions, thoughts on political savvy before we move into change management? Okay, so now let's talk about change management. This is a big one because, as I was saying earlier, and you'll see, there's change management training. There's so many things about change management. Why? Because according to Gartner, a typical organization today has undertaken 5 major organization-wide changes in the past 3 years. And nearly 75% of organizations expect to multiply the types of major change initiatives they will take in the next 3 years. So there are so many things that are going on within organizations. So structural changes, technological changes. Change management is huge also because of technology. Every time you get a new system, that's change management right there, because now it's a new way of doing the work. And so here's the biggest thing though that caught me about this survey and the data. Half of change initiatives fail, and only 34% are a clear success. Why is that? Why is that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Half of the change initiatives fail. Why is that? So The reason why a lot of the change initiatives fail is that a lot of times in organizations, change is managed from the top down. What does that mean? Leadership gets together during a leadership retreats. They say, yeah, we're going to do this. We need to change our focus. We've done some trend analysis, and now we've seen that, as an organization, we need to focus in these key areas. We're going to make some structural changes to the organization. We may change people's roles. We may have to move people within organization. Oh yes, very smart. They get a very expensive consultant. They've done the analysis. It's going to create this yield. It's going to help do this, help do that. And then they roll out the change from the top. There's no communication. There was no input from the employees. There was no engagement from the workforce. And sometimes another thing that you will find with how change management is rolled out within organizations is sometimes the leadership starts to leak that there's a change coming, and then there are no details. So the chatter starts to go out to the workforce, and everybody is just filling in the blanks with what they think the change is. So it creates this negative connotation of change because people are like, okay, so what is this about? This is something new again. I have to now be moved. I have to learn this, so I have to be shifted. Or, I mean, I worked within a department where, due to space changes within the organization, they made a decision to basically make everybody remote, and you only had to come in to attend meetings. But the change wasn't properly thought out, wasn't properly walked through. And then they realized that created a whole nother issue of people not being connected, teams not being in sync with each other. And then there was another rapid change. And they said, well, everybody now has to come into the office, and you can only telework 1 day a week. And of course, performance dropped, engagement dropped, and people who could leave started to leave because they felt like something was being taken from them. How come you said I could work from home every day a week and only come for meetings? I go from that to all of a sudden now I can only telework 1 day. And those changes just come like that. And so those are the things that make change management, 50% of them fail, according to Gartner. All right. So what are the things that can make change happen? We've touched on this a little bit. So reorgs or mergers and acquisition, culture changes. Culture changes. One person in an organization can spark a culture change. One person in an organization can spark a culture change. Remember what I said earlier about culture is a set of norms that a group of people accept. So all of a sudden, if one person is interrupting in meetings, is being disruptive, is being rude, and that is not addressed, then that immediately that has shifted the culture. And now the culture is like, okay, it's okay for to do that. Or you have an underperformer that is not isolated, or not isolated, but it's not addressed. And so people think, why do I have to keep working and performing when XYZ is not doing their share, and I have to pick up their work? And because I work hard, then you're giving me more work. Okay, so that something as simple as that can trigger a culture change of underperformance. Business transformation that has to do with IT. So whenever you change how you do business, you introduce a new system, you implement a new framework, you standardize a procedure. All of that is business transformation, and that leads to change. Workforce and leadership changes. So, we see this when we work with organizations. Sometimes you see a bunch of folks retire, and you have a new crop of people come in. That mix in the organization can create change. Leadership changes, absolutely. We see this a lot of times. When you have a new leader in an organization and they come with their own agenda, and it's like, okay, this is how it's going to be. And so that can initiate change. Now, what can you do to make change management? And all of the information that we share in our webinar, by the way, they are based on theories and books that we've studied, that we've worked on. So what we're talking about is based on experience and also different books. If you are interested, I have some resources that I can give you for different books on change management, on systems thinking, on workforce, on quality. So all of these resources come from different books and our depth and breadth of experience. Okay, so the quick tips: engage the workforce to co-create change. Yes, leadership can sit down and figure out what their top primary agenda is, but you have to engage the workforce. So yesterday I was at the FDA. We facilitated what I would call really a brainstorming session for their for one of their offices, the Oprah office under Office of Pharmaceutical Quality. And we worked with leadership separately for months prior to that to really develop some of the core, core competencies that they wanted to focus on to elevate their workforce. But we encouraged them to do a 1 day session with the workforce. So I was in a group, me and my co-facilitator, we were in a group of 100 with 100 project managers yesterday doing exactly that. So yes, they wanted to create this change to elevate the workforce, but we encourage them to co-create it. So engage the workforce. So this was just an example of how that organization engaged the workforce. So leadership can do their work, and they can do the analysis. They can say, well, this is the direction we want to go, but engage the workforce. Let employees lead the implementation. If they come up with the ideas, they're more likely to execute them, because a lot of times you see what change gets stuck. You come up with great ideas. If people don't co-create it, if there's no buy-in, if the communication is poor, they're not going to execute. So let employees lead a communication, implementation. I'm rushing now because it's 12:30. And then the last point about change management is communicate openly and often about the change. Let it not just be a one-time thing. Oh, this we're going to change this. We're going to change your job descriptions. We're going to change how you work with different partners, and boom, and that's it. So communicate openly. Be honest. Be clear about your non-negotiables when you communicate. So understand what it is you can and what you can't do, and be honest about that, but still communicate. Communicate often and clearly about change. And that brings me to the end of the webinar for today. Just want to quickly mention, we do have other webinars come up. We do these webinars twice a month. So October 9th, 5 ways to effectively manage conflict at work. And then October 23rd, 10 tips to communicate better by email. And then November 7th, we have our annual Magnificent Leadership Conference. We encourage you to take a look at the conference website. We are going to have fabulous speakers. It's going to be 3 tracks: leading yourself, leading people, and leading an organization. We have a DHS Osdego director coming in to speak on advancing your federal career. We have some agencies exhibiting, like Department of Education. So we do want you to participate. We want you to come and give yourself a day to really grow. It's about growth and development, personal development. Let me see. Somebody says I don't hear anything. Ooh, is that the case? You may have muted your. You may have done something. Let me just see. Okay, so I have other people saying I can hear you. I'm not sure what happened, but I hear you. Okay, other people saying I hear you. Okay, so I'm not sure what happened, Tisha, but also we have recordings of the webinar. We post them on our YouTube page. So I'm sorry if you couldn't hear me. Hopefully you can catch the recording. But yeah, so I do want to thank you for joining us today. Do you have any questions on change management? I just wanted to go back to Linda. Linda, did you have some good insights on change management? So we offer, I mean, of course, you know this, we do a lot of courses on change management where we're really going to depth on how to role change, different change management methodologies. This webinar is only half an hour, so we don't go into all that here, but if that's something that's of interest to you, feel free to reach out. Let me just look. Oh, APG, Aberdeen Proving Ground. Okay, I can hear you. Thank you, Linda. Okay. Do you have any other questions? This is my email. Please feel free to email me and connect with me. She said, is there a phone number to call you, or is it just email? There is a phone number. I can give you the phone number, Linda. It's 301-577-9300. 301-577-9300. Did you get it? Awesome. I'm sorry. 301-577-9300. That is our phone number here. Linda, I can also email you and set up a call. So I'll definitely looking forward to hearing from you. Any other questions? Got it. Okay, awesome, awesome. Any other questions, comments? Um, I'm happy to stay on for an extra minute. I know it's 12:36 right now, but I always want to make sure that I answer any other questions or comments that you have. Anything about any of the other competencies that we didn't go into detail about? All right, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you spending the afternoon with me, and I hope this was helpful for you. We look forward to seeing you again on an AMA LTL coming soon. Take care and have a great afternoon.